Hi, Virginia Tech fans. Will Stewart and David Cunningham with Tech Sideline here. And today we are going to go over the performance of Virginia Tech men's basketball in the last 5 minutes of their ACC games. So we're recording this in the early afternoon of Monday, January 24th, 2022. So at this point, Tech's record in the ACC is 2-5. They're going to play North Carolina at North Carolina later on tonight, which is amazing because David's here, so he's going to drive down to North Carolina. So Tech's 2-5, and the storyline is that they've struggled in the last 5 minutes of tight games, particularly in the ACC. So David ran a lot of numbers, and we're going to drill down into team performance in the last 5 minutes of 7 ACC games and individual performance in the last 5 minutes of 7 ACC games. So you're talking, remember this as you listen to the numbers, and we'll put some graphics up here soon. We're talking about 35 minutes of game action. So David, let's take the final 5 minutes, the team statistics first. So talk about your data collection here and let people know what they're looking at.
Yeah, so that's the first thing I did. I went through and basically went through the final 5 minutes of every ACC box score and just jotted down every single statistic. And after I did that, I said, okay, well, it's probably going to be more interesting if I go down and break it down by player. But I think what stands out is Virginia Tech is 33% from the floor in the last 5 minutes of games, period. And I threw the averages in there in the far right column, which shows you about how many they make total field goals. They make about 2.5 of the 7 they shoot each game in each 5 minutes. And 3-point field goals, 22%. I mean, that shows you that Tech is hoisting a lot of shots up, as we've seen. A couple against Virginia at the end, a couple against Boston College at the end.
Right.
But overall, this team is not performing well, not shooting the ball well. And on the other side, they're allowing a lot of offensive rebounds. We saw it especially against NC State in that first game, 8 offensive rebounds in the final 5 minutes of games, 5 against Boston College on Saturday. They did a good job against Virginia, as you see here, 0, but they also turned the ball over 4 times. 17 turnovers in 35 minutes.
Right,
That
so
is
17 turnovers in 35 minutes and 20 offensive rebounds allowed in 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't have the numbers, and I could calculate it, but I didn't. It's a lot of data to calculate just what other teams are shooting in that time.
Yeah.
But I have to imagine that 20 offensive rebounds for the opponent is a lot. Opponents are getting the ball back from a lot of their missed shots, which leads to extra opportunities. Then you turn the ball over 17 times. So Tech's making its free throws when it gets to the line. 10 of 14 from the free throw line. But as you see in the averages, Tech's only averaging 2 free throws in the final 5 minutes of each game.
Right, and it's the final 5 minutes where you got your playmaker and he's driving to the basket and he's drawing fouls, and that's one of the things coaches like to have. So looking at the two shaded gray areas, those are the 2 games that Tech has won in ACC play. And looking at the Notre Dame game, it's pretty easy to figure out. Tech was 4 of 6 down the field, from the field down the stretch. They did turn it over twice, and they did allow 3 offensive rebounds. But in general, they shot fairly well down the stretch against Notre Dame. Now, at NC State, Tech did not shoot well, and they did turn it over 5 times. But they got 9 rebounds, and they only allowed 2 offensive rebounds down the stretch, and that enabled them to hang on. So is there anything else, looking at maybe the individual games here, that really stands out to you?
Well, I think Mike Young praised the team's rebounding effort at NC State, and you said there 9 rebounds they got in the final 5 minutes.
Right.
You flip the script and look at the first NC State game. They allowed 8 offensive rebounds in the final 5 minutes. And only got 4. Yeah. So they played a lot better defense down the stretch. They didn't make as many baskets, and they also turned it over 5 times as opposed to 3 times in that first game. But they played a lot better defense and rebounded the ball better. I think what's crazy is Virginia Tech did not turn the ball over against Boston College in the final 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
But they didn't get to the free throw line. They were 1 of 5 from behind the arc and 2 of 8 overall. And they allowed 5 offensive rebounds. There was that one possession where there were 2 or 3 offensive rebounds, and those are the possessions where teams can basically use an entire minute.
That's interesting you say that, because looking at the live stats, starting at roughly the 2-minute mark, Boston College had the ball for a full minute.
Yeah.
And eventually they wound up scoring. And offensive rebounding was a huge issue against Boston College the entire game. The Eagles didn't miss many. I think they rebounded 60% of the shots that they missed throughout the game.
And they had 16 total offensive rebounds, which is the most Virginia Tech has allowed in a game all season.
And they only missed something like 27 shots, and they rebounded 16
of them. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on, and so move on to the player stats. And so you ask yourself, I think there's a lot. First of all, I think there's a lot of interesting perception that when you actually break down the player stats, you find your perceptions to be false. And one of them I want to home in right off the bat is, Naheem Aline shouldn't touch the ball in the last few minutes. He's a turnover machine. Well, if you look at the turnovers column, he has 4, but all 4 of those came in 1 minute
against NC State
out of the 35 minutes that were depicted.
So if you take the NC State game out of it, he has no turnovers.
Yeah,
which is honestly crazy to think about. And remember, the guys at the bottom of the list, Padula, Ojiako, Maddox, and Gassan, pretty much all of their minutes came against Wake Forest and Duke. The one or two exceptions is that would be Padula and Maddox. Padula obviously had his clutch free throws at NC State, but the majority of minutes in those 35 minutes are given to the 5 starters. So it's the majority of the starters. And what stands out to me, first of all, Mutz, 11 offensive rebounds. I mean, he's rebounding the ball really, really well
in 35 minutes.
Yeah. Aluma, 6 turnovers, and 3 of them came at Virginia in the final 5 minutes.
Right. So
there are a couple. I think what stands out first of all is there were a couple really, really bad minutes for Virginia Tech. There was in terms of turnovers, Aluma at Virginia, Aline at NC State.
Right.
We're just turnover.
Yeah.
And Aluma 3 of 14 from the floor in the final 5 minutes.
So that's the other thing to look at and talk about when you look at the player stats. You look at Murphy and Mutz; they're 11 of 17. The rest of the team is 6 of 34 in the last 5 minutes. And what I think of when I look at this is, I don't think that, even though Murphy and Mutz have shot well, they don't appear to really be the go-to guys.
They're not.
Down the stretch. Naheem Aline's getting a lot of shots. Keve Aluma's getting a lot of shots. And the other weird thing is Hunter Cattoor is not. Look at his stat line in the last 35 minutes of these 7 games. He's such a good scorer for Virginia Tech, and against Boston College was having a heck of a day.
Yeah.
And then not only did he not take a shot in the last 5 minutes of BC,
I think last 8 minutes.
He made 2 3-pointers in a row against Boston College. The last one was with, I think, 8 minutes and 25 seconds left to go. Nothing after that. Yeah. Now let's be clear. I'm not criticizing Hunter Cattoor.
Yeah.
I gave that stat on Twitter, and somebody said, "Hey, be careful now." I'm just pointing out that for whatever reason, Hunter Cattoor, who is an excellent scorer for Virginia Tech, has not been part of end-of-game offensive operations for him.
And you know what's weird is, if you think back to last season, Will, when Virginia Tech had close games at Miami, at Miami and at Louisville, Hunter Cattoor made the 3 at Miami. Hunter Cattoor had the almost game-tying 3 at Louisville. He was the guy taking those shots, and he's only got 3 shots. And I don't know if this is Mike Young is drawing stuff up for Aline and for the rest of the team and not, but to have a guy that can shoot that well and he's not
a factor.
It's essentially like, and what might factor in, I don't know, but is how he's playing defense on the other end of the floor, because Mike Young has said he's guarding the other team's best player.
He's an excellent defender.
He's an excellent defender. Is that factoring in, and he's exhausted by the end of the game, last 5 minutes? Who knows? But the fact that he's essentially a non-factor, he's only taken 3 of 51 shots in the final 5 minutes.
In 35 minutes.
And you've got 3 guys, Murphy, Aline, and Aluma, that have they've taken a combined 34 shots.
Right,
and Mutz and Cattoor have taken a combined 10.
Right. Yeah. So interesting stuff. Just wanted to highlight that for you guys, and hopefully the Hokies will get to work on this and reverse these trends, and then pick up some wins in the rest of the ACC schedule. So thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe.